Hello, and this is Professor Marsh, and this is at least the first part of lesson number 6, which is all about dependence. Uh, what I'm going to do first is to look at the lesson plan that is contained in the IRS materials at the Vita TCE uh, uh, Central website, and then also go through the um, dependent workout, which is also at that same website. So let's go ahead and get started with this. So uh, if we start with the uh, lesson plan that is in your materials, it's just 6 pages long. The first page has a number of important definitions, dependency tests, which are tests used for identifying qualifying children or qualifying relatives as dependents. Uh, Dependents are either a qualifying child or qualifying relative of a taxpayer. So there's two different ways to have a qualifying child or a qualifying relative. In order to have a qualifying relative, it has to not previously been able to qualify as a qualifying child, and there are different rules for both. The taxpayer's spouse cannot be claimed as a dependent. Some examples of dependents include a child, stepchild, adopted child, brother, sister, or parent. Uh, Exemptions, personal or dependency. Remember that the deduction for personal and dependency exemptions is suspended for the tax years 2018 through 2025 by the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And although the exemption amount is zero, the ability to claim a dependent may make the taxpayers eligible for other tax benefits. For example, the following tax benefits may all be associated with a dependent: the child tax credit, the additional child tax credit, the credit for other dependents, the earned income credit, which is a very important credit for our work in the Vita program, the dependent care credit, head of household filing status, and other tax benefits. A qualifying child, to be identified as a qualifying child dependent, there's a lot of tests, and I'm going to refer you to the worksheet that we're going to see in publication 4012 on qualifying for dependents. There's a one-page that summarizes all these rules, and I'm not going to read them all at this time for both qualifying child and qualifying relative. But those are our big terms for this material: dependency tests, dependents, exemptions, qualifying child, and qualifying relative. That's all about lesson 6. So what we're going to do is we're going to review the materials, and we'll see the lesson objectives from Form 1040, the dependent section, and then also Form 13614-C, which is our intake, interview, and quality review form. So we'll take a look at that. We're going to look at publication 4012 and the dependents tabs, and we're going to see an overview of the rules for claiming a dependent. And if you'd like to, I'm on page 3 right now, if you'd like to go ahead and click on that right now, that will take you on the internet to a one-page summary of the tests to be a qualifying child and the test to be a qualifying relative. And I want to recommend that to you, and maybe keep that in front of you someplace where you can find it quickly as you're answering the questions for this section. So as you're doing the exercises and the examples, keep that in front of you. There's also a link to publication 17, which has information about this. And then there's also a link on the internet to the IRS's website about frequently asked questions about dependents and exemptions. So maybe take a quick look at those now and then come back. The qualifying child tests, we're going to learn to explain the details of the 5 tests that must be met for a qualifying child, and those are the relationship, age, residency, support, and tests, and also the rules about a qualifying child of more than one person. And you will see the links back to the forms and to the publications for that. And then the qualifying relative tests, the 4 tests that have to be met for qualifying relative. The first is that it's not a qualifying child, as said before, then a member of the household or a relationship test, and that's a single test there, member of household or relationship. Then gross income, no more than $4,300, and support. And so those are the 4 tests for a qualifying relative, and you can see the links there as well. And also, in addition to publications 4491 and publication 4012, you'll see on the internet a form 2120, which is a multiple support declaration, and that can be helpful when you have multiple people supporting the same person and trying to decide who gets the dependency exemption. Then there's a section on children of divorced or separated parents. Sadly, that's a very important topic today, and you can see that there are special rules that apply if the dependent is supported by parents who are divorced, separated, or otherwise live apart. And there are differences between custodial and non-custodial parents. And there is a section in publication 4012. It's called Table 3, Children of Divorced or Separated Parents or Parents Who Live Apart. Table 1 is for qualifying child, and Table 2 is for qualifying relative. Qualifying 3 is for the divorced or separated parents. And then on the internet, there's a form 8332, which is a release or revocation of release of claim to exemption for the child by the custodial parent, and so you can see that as well. So as you review this lesson, again, keep that overview of the rules for claiming a dependent, that 1 page in front of you. And with that, let's go ahead and go on to the Vita TCE rule. So I'm going to just go to Vita TCE Central. It's my top choice that pops right up. And I'm going to go to the content of each course, and I'm going to go to the dependence workout. And so I'm now in the dependence workout, and you look at the bottom of the page, and you say, wow, there's 48 pages. Oh my goodness. What are we going to do with those 48 pages? Well, we're going to go through them step by step. Sometimes we're going to group a few together. But the dependence lesson, which is on the first page, is 12 pages long. And I do recommend that you go ahead and pop that up, hit the link on page 1, and just go through the dependency tests, how you use the volunteer resources guide, and the tests that have to be met for all dependents. And you can see it explained with lots of examples, step by step, on these 12 pages. And beginning on page 6, you see a number of examples and exercises. And then on the 12th page, you can see the answers to the exercises at the end of this this printout. So just go ahead and take a look at that. And then let's go on to page number 2. And on page number 2, we're shown the intake, interview, and quality review sheet. And what you ask your clients at Vita is you ask them to list the name of everyone who lived with you during the last year in your household other than your spouse, and anyone you supported but who did not live with you last year. So anyone that you financially supported, not someone who cried on your shoulder at lunch sometime, but somebody who you actually financially supported but who did not live with you. And you're asked to get that information from our taxpayers and list those names, and then we go person by person through those names to see if they qualify. And some of the questions are related to the various tests, and some of them aren't. So then on the 3rd page, you can see dependency job aids for publication 4012. and you've got a link to the overview again of the rules for claiming a dependent, and then a link to all three of the tables. And if you click on table 1, this gives us the table for all dependents, if we're going to have someone who qualifies as a dependent or not, and that's just sort of a one-pager. And then table 2, and you've got a 2-page on qualifying relative dependents, and then you've got table 3, which is, I said before, is the children of divorced or separated parents, and then you've got a worksheet for determining support. So some of the tests depend on how much how much of the support of that person was paid for by the person claiming the dependency exemption for that person, and then comparing that to the household, and also looking at the expenses that that person provided on his or her behalf, and their earnings and that sort of thing. And so that's that. Then you've got some case studies that begin on page 4. And so your first case study regarding Ruth, she got married in November, and so her dad can't claim her as a dependent because she's now a married woman. And so you can't claim a dependent. She's filing a joint return with her husband. So now that she's married and filing jointly, she is not eligible to be a dependent for her dad, even though he provided most of her support for the year, and she lived with him for most of the year. Now we've got case study number 2. This is Joan. She has an adopted child from Cambodia who is not a citizen, but she is a resident, and so Joan gets to claim that adopted child as a dependent. That adopted child lived with her during the tax year, and that's fine. So that qualifies. And you can go through here and you can see the explanations if you don't understand the reasoning behind these case studies. But then you get to a skills warm-up, and you have the first question with respect to dependents. True or false, Jennifer Rawls, an 18-year-old single mother who can be claimed as a dependent by her parents. Can she claim her infant as a dependent on her own tax return? And the answer is going to be false, because since Jennifer can be claimed by her parents, she gets no dependency. Jennifer gets no dependency deduction on her own tax return. And then if you click on true or false, if you get it wrong, you can see the reason why it's wrong, and then click on the other one, see the reason why that one is right. The second question, true or false, a resident of Mexico meets the requirements of the citizen or resident test. Now, this is something that if you didn't study tax law, you might not know. You might say, well, a resident of Mexico is not a citizen or a resident of the United States, but actually the answer is true. And a citizen of Mexico or Canada meets the residency test. So there you go. So a resident of Mexico meets the requirement as an eligible resident and meets the resident test. Now you've got the skills warm-up and question. Oh, and that's going to be it for right now, but we'll talk again later. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.